Hey everybody, welcome to the Diabetes Empowerment Summit. I am your host, Danielle Hargenrader, and I'm bringing you another amazing guest today. His name is Graham Chamberlain. I'm going to read you just a few sentences about his life, and we're going to get right into the story. So Graham was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 2001. He's been practicing karate since the age of 6 and has competed in 4 World Karate Championships after his diagnosis. He advocates for diabetes awareness and uses his achievements in karate to inspire others to not let diabetes hold them back from reaching their goals. So Graham, thank you so much for taking the time to come to me today from South Africa. I'm really excited to have you here. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much, Danielle, and thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So Graham and I just met. We were talking off the air, and he has a lot of really interesting and amazing things. So we're at the Diabetes Empowerment Summit. We like to talk about empowerment in the sense of taking care of our mental and emotional health. So I just want to hear a little bit about when you were diagnosed. How did you handle that? Kind of how was that feeling for you? And what was the journey like from being 16 years old, already practicing karate, already, seemingly having things going in a certain way, and then getting the diagnosis? How did that go over?
Firstly, Danielle, about 7 days after my black belt grading, so I achieved my black belt when I turned 16, and about 7 days after that, I became extremely ill. I became tired, I urinated a lot, I just became very, very weak. And my mom, fortunately, is a nurse, and she picked up on my, behavior and saw something is wrong. And luckily, she had test strips, urine test strips, and she tested, and I was on +4 on that test strip, and she realized immediately something is wrong. Let's take you to the hospital. So I went straight to hospital, and from there they booked me straight into ICU. My sugar was 32 at that point. And I was shocked. I mean, I wasn't even scared. I was just confused as to what is happening. What is diabetes? Oh, I can't eat sugar. That's what my knowledge was. I really didn't know what to expect. And sure. I slept the night there in hospital. And the next day a rep from insulin manufacturer came to me and showed me how to inject and said they're going to send over a dietitian and so forth. But all this was just information overload for me. I was just, baffled as to what is going on. I'm 16, I'm a teenager. Unfortunately, I was not, fighting it. I was just not knowing what was going to happen and what impact this would have in my life.
Yeah.
It is, that if I knew then I probably would have given it more attention. So I would, when I speak to other diabetics, newly diabetics, then, I try to inform them that, listen, this is going to change your whole life. And there's so many things that you will need to do, which is difficult in order to prevent complications and so forth. And those things was never told to me. I had to experience the hard way. I had a very, very, very horrible hyper not too long after my diagnosis, where I went almost into a coma. I skateboard until today. I still skateboard. I enjoy it very much. I just limited now due to the karate because I'm scared of injury. But anyway, so I was on holiday with my family, and I was skateboarding the whole day. And nighttime came, mom called us in, you guys must come eat. So I injected, but I injected way too much insulin because I didn't have the knowledge that my body would be more responsive to my insulin after my activity. So I just injected as the doctor said I should, and that really, really, really messed up my evening because for a short while after that, after dinner, we went for a walk. It was in the bushveld. And all of a sudden, my blood sugar is dropping. I had no knowledge of needing to carry sugar with me or glucose with me or anything like that. And I fell to the ground. And my mom obviously immediately knew what was happening. And she told my dad, run, to go get obviously some glucose. And fortunately, he saved me that day because I just didn't know what was happening with my body. It was falling so fast. It was such a feeling like I'm falling inside of myself. I was trying to eat chocolate, and the chocolate went hard in my mouth. That's how dry my mouth was. It was a terrible experience, and I had to see a psychiatrist for it, a psychologist for it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's, you're saying so many important things right now, and I just want to kind of touch in really quickly because you're saying so many relevant and important things. Doesn't matter to me, at least in my experience of living with diabetes for almost 30 years and coaching thousands of people over the last 10 years, it doesn't matter whether you're newly diagnosed or whether you've had diabetes for 30 years. Hypers or hypos, as you guys, low blood sugar episodes, they never, I don't want to say they're never not scary, right? Because we can, at a certain point, once we have more knowledge, as you said, we can better manage it, right? I mean, I have a YouTube video specifically about carrying glucose with you all the time because I had a similar experience when I was 19 at a retail store, and I almost passed out in the store and sitting on the curb in the parking lot, almost dying, the whole thing. I've been there, right? And that wasn't even, for me, it wasn't even lack of knowledge, it was lack of preparedness. And so I think that there's a huge, it runs the gamut, but we all have this, it's kind of like diabetes is not your fault, right? But it's your responsibility. So that's kind of the empowerment that I'm always talking about. It's like, I know that it can feel burdensome at times, but the more we treat it with the preparedness and the respect that it deserves, the less burdensome it begins to feel. And I also kind of want to just say that that information, that overload of information upon diagnosis, as again, from everyone I've spoken to, that's quote unquote one of my least favorite words, but normal. Your whole life changes in the snap of a finger, and it's impossible for any human to just say, oh, here's a day or two of education about this. Now my brain has to be a pancreas. This is just going to fall into some, easy to follow regimen, right? So I just kind of want to say that what you're saying is, for whoever's watching, it's normal to not get it at first. It's normal to not get it for a long time, because until you have those experiences, you learn from that kind of painful teacher, which is life. But again, I try to choose to see that as a lesson versus a punishment, right? Or it's the perspective from which we see it. And it sounds like you kind of had some ability to make that into that kind of mindset on your own, or was that due to your mom? Or how did you kind of go from, I'm passed out on the ground from a hypo and I don't know what's going on, to hey, I'm here, I'm, fighting in World Karate Championships. What closed the gap, I guess, in between all of that for you?
I've said it many times before. I think karate actually saved my life, even though I was diagnosed straight after that, but after my black belt in grading. But yeah, just the sheer perseverance and fighting spirits that we need and require and obtain during training, just to help me to push myself further and not to sit down and cry. And it's okay to do that, but then get over, get through that, process that, but not just to feel sorry for yourself, but to lift yourself up and to accept the challenges or your opponents that's in front of you, and then take them on. That's the only way you're going to be able to deal with it. And I think I've taken that knowledge or experience from my karate and pushed it into my diabetes management, as to just fight for it, and to inspire. So yeah, what I've seen on groups, social media groups and on WhatsApp groups where I'm involved in diabetes, is a lot of people feel overwhelmed or stuck in their situation. And I don't really want to use the word that they feel sorry for themselves, but they're in a mental state where they are very negative, because this disease is so difficult to manage, and because there's so many things that's impacting our lives or impacting our blood sugar. It feels, and it can feel, and I feel many a time like that, just that it is just too much. It's too much to handle. And I think the karate side of it helped me and helps me to just fight back and change my mindset. So yeah, that's how I feel. I've been in a very bad space with regards to diabetes, where I felt overwhelmed and all of that, but you know, it's a mindset that you need to change, and you know, you need to work on yourself in order to push yourself to, you know, help other people as well.
Yes, I totally agree.
Get out of that.
Getting out of that mindset. It goes like this.
Yes. Just like your blood sugar. It's some days it's going wonderful and I'm doing everything perfect, and the next day I'm doing everything perfect, but my blood sugar is a mess. Yeah. And that's really, it drains you. It's difficult, but we have to uplift ourselves. We have to try some way and just fight through it.
I agree. And so, and not just kind of a background is for me, just a little bit, is that I spent, you know, out of 29 years now living with diabetes, I spent about 15 of those years in that mindset that you're talking about, in that I'm stuck, everything is hopeless, I'm clearly helpless, and definitely there was a lot of self-pity. I will admit that, you know, I've admitted that many times. And I think there's a very, very distinct connection between doing something physically. I'm not saying that you need to go become a karate practitioner, or you need, I'm talking about the actual physical movement of your body. Emotions are meant to be, that's why they're called emotions, in motion. They're meant to move through you. We're meant to feel them, process them, and then keep moving. Whereas when you're living with this kind of disease that's 24/7, it can feel a little bit difficult to allow that process to happen, because it is that ebb and flow, right? So you have karate as that physical thing, and I have a variety of physical things. There's not just one thing. I like to lift weights. I like to do yoga. I like to dance. I love to dance. I like to walk. I like to jog. I like to just sit outside in nature. I don't label myself or box myself into a physical movement category, because I like to have access to all of them. But I can say for certain that when I choose to just get up. So if I'm sitting on the couch, or I'm sitting at my work desk, which I'm standing at now, because that also changed my life by getting a standing desk, just standing up physically and physiologically changes your emotional state, right? So my kind of recommendation here, listening to what you're saying and making that connection, is that one of the best tools that we can kind of have, and we might not make the connection to the mental and emotional toolbox, that a physical movement is going to be a thing that's going to get that, but it's so directly connected, all three of these things, right? In your experience as well. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So speaking of tools that we have to manage kind of our emotional and mental state and kind of bring us more feelings of empowerment. And the other thing that you said too about this is that it does ebb and flow. When I say Diabetes Empowerment Summit, my vision for that isn't that everybody's just 100% empowered, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's not at all what I'm indicating, but I am indicating that you can feel more confident and more empowered more often, kind of just like a more joy and less pain situation. Like if you're feeling way more pain, you can kind of bring in more joy. So what other kind of tools do you use outside of karate to keep yourself practicing those daily practices of refreshing your mental and emotional state and your relationship with diabetes?
Yeah, it is difficult indeed to try and stay positive and try and get things done. It's like really you can feel like it's an effort just to brush your teeth or just to get up and make the bed. And when your blood sugar is so high and you feel so down, it can really bring you to rock bottom. And that's certainly what I've been through with diabetes. So and it's a simple thing as that, is to just push yourself to get up and make your bed and do actually the things that you find difficult to or not wanting to do, and actually do that. Then you see, once you've started it, you immediately, it's almost like the mindset changes by itself. So my advice, one of my tools would be, is to do what I don't want to do. Mm-hmm. Is if that makes sense.
It does. It absolutely does.
Force myself to do what I'm too tired to do or not motivated to do. And then when I actually start to do it, then I start to feel better about myself, and I see, okay, it's okay, I'm okay, I can do this. Yeah. And then everything changes. Everything
changes. A tool that I also use all the time is just do one thing. That's kind of like for me, even though I love working out, I love it. I still struggle it's like when I'm about to get ready to work out, like my brain still tosses up 30, well, your blood sugar is this, or, you know, you worked out yesterday, or I'm like, brain, come on, like, you know, you want to do this. You know, the second you get into the movement, you're going to feel amazing, but there's always that resistance in between sitting there and feeling bad about it and actually doing it. So I like that you said brush your teeth, because that's like a physical hygiene thing that we do every day, right? We don't really think too much about it. That's the exact same thing that I talk about with mental and emotional hygiene. There's something that you do every day. It's a practice. It's an actual physical activity, whatever. And there's so many things, like for you and me, exercise, meditation, journaling, praying, right? I'm not talking about any particular religion. It doesn't matter. Going outside and connecting with nature, just sitting in the grass, sitting in the dirt, sitting in the sand, whatever ground you have, something physical that takes you from one spot to the next. You move yourself over. Once you do that, like you said, all of a sudden you become emboldened and say, you know what? That was doable. I think I can do something else. And are you familiar with Brian Tracy, the motivational kind of, so in America, he's older now, but he has a book called Eat That Frog. And it's the exact same mindset that you're talking about. Do the thing that seems most daunting first. And if you do that thing first, you will automatically have a shift in your mental and emotional state. And you'll be like, oh yeah, I can probably do one more thing. Because we probably, like most of us, have a habit of being like, well, I need to do all of the things in order to be successful. That's not true. And that's self-sabotage at its finest. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because it's a really good point. Make your bed. I don't make my bed. I'll just be honest. I don't make my bed. I'm a rebel in that sense, but I do brush my teeth. So tell us a little bit more about karate, because I know that, so just kind of for context for people who are watching this is being filmed at the very end of May, and we're still in COVID, right? And we talked a little, so let's just touch just a tad on that for people who are curious. I'm in Philadelphia. Things are on a pretty strict lockdown, wearing masks in public, right? Totally fine. I get it. We're all, you know, protecting each other. Is that going on in South Africa, where people are wearing masks, or what is the kind of the climate there in that sense?
Yeah, indeed. We went on a strict lockdown. It's called level 5, up until end of April. And there it was, nobody was allowed out of the house. Only essential work was being allowed. There's, you know, limited, people can go to the shops, one per family, and it's queues outside because they're only allowing a certain amount of people inside. And that's had a big effect also on karate, because all external activities are completely shut down. We're currently on level 4, and we're expecting our President Cyril Ramaphosa to announce at the end of May that we can start from the 1st of June to go into level 4, which will, you know, allow more things to happen. But the karate-wise, dojo, training in a dojo, I only suspect that would be on level 1. So I've adapted. I'm teaching class via Zoom. I'm doing Zoom classes Mondays to Thursdays. And our Poland team is training bi-weekly on Saturdays. So we've got another training now this Saturday, meaning tomorrow, from 9 till 11. And then, yeah, that's just the way how we try to keep ourselves active. And with regards to our restrictions, yeah, it's been a massive challenge. And we have to adapt to our circumstances, and it's not always easy, but we find ways.
Exactly, and I think that's really inspiring, because for someone like me who worked from home already, and I really was I loved going to exercise classes, don't get me wrong, like that was one of the biggest, but I'm not really complaining because that's not really that big of a challenge. For someone whose training revolves around physically interacting with another person, fighting, grappling, whatever the case may be, are you concerned? Just, this is totally out of my own personal curiosity, like, because I know you said you have some large world karate championship coming up in September. Are you, do you feel teaching virtually and having these practices without the physical interaction with your grappling partner or what have you. Is that a concern for you, or do you feel like because everybody is going to have to adapt to that training, it will kind of equalize the field?
Exactly that. Yes. I also the federation is called WUKF, so that's the World Union of Karate Do Federations. So they've got an all-stars athletes, you know, Zoom classes that they also give, and the professional athletes also talk about what struggle, because they fight against somebody. There's no, you know, someone hit you as you would have done when you were sparring. So it's a concern, but we're all in that same situation. We're all training in our own ways, punching, grabbing a tennis ball or whichever way, just to get our reflexes sharp. But we're all stuck in that situation. So we'll have to see how it's going to pan out when we're actually physically competing against each other, and even if it's going to happen in that way. There's different divisions in karate, so there's kata and then there's fighting. I've been selected for both. So, but yeah, we don't know what's going to happen and how it's going to pan out in September. So it's interesting times for us. Yeah.
Do you think that that having diabetes has, I mean, I say for me, the answer is definitely yes, but do you think it has made you more adaptable, more able to go with unexpected changes in your life where you're more accepting of them, or do you find that it has nothing to do with it? And just curious.
Absolutely. Being a diabetic, as everyone that's got diabetes would know, every day is different, even if you do the exact same thing as what you did yesterday. There's so many things that's got an effect on our blood glucose. So it's constantly changing. And me going today to, well, now I'm in lockdown, but normally if I would go out for a weekend away, or if it's going to a competition somewhere, every time it'll be a different situation with regards to my blood glucose. So it's never just the same. So it's very hard for us as diabetics just to pack up our things and go somewhere, and we have to adapt. We need to be proactive and think about what we need in order to handle a situation. Like in Africa, when I went to the bush, me and my wife for honeymoon went to Botswana, and we went to game reserves that side, and it's very rural. It's not a shop. It's not 5 minutes away. You can quickly get something. You have to plan. I had to plan how much insulin I needed to take, how many,
pump sites.
Yes, correct. I needed to work out and then take extra, and there's a lot of planning that you need to do and adapting that you need to, just to be able to try to live normally and safely.
Right.
So yeah, I think diabetes has definitely taught me how to adapt and how to accept also certain things.
Adaptability and acceptance.
Yes. So yeah, I thank diabetes for that, because it's pushed me up a level.
Yes, I totally agree, and I totally understand. And I also want to just say that, Graham and I have this perspective now, but for people who are watching that aren't necessarily at that point yet, I would just like to offer you a word of reassurance that it's a journey, and that some days you might feel really empowered, and some days you might feel really on top of things and full of acceptance and awareness and adaptability, and some days you might feel like crap, and that's okay. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. That doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It just means that you're human, and there's a range of emotions that we're always going to feel, and I think we get bogged down by this perfection mindset. I think perfection is one of the dirtiest words. I think it's one of the most damaging words that exists in the human language, because people use that as a reason to not do anything. Because if it's not going to be perfect, then why even bother? And it's that is, to me, from a coaching perspective and from my own perspective, that has been one of the most detrimental mindsets of perfection. And it sounds like that's not something that you even take into consideration. Did you ever, or are you did you get to that point?
I'm going to make a comment on that. I also follow a lot of diabetes groups on Instagram.
Sure.
And what I like, in the community, what I see is people posting when things are going bad. They're not just posting when it's 100%, 5.6 is my blood sugar, or 5.2, or whichever. They're posting when they're struggling. And that I like a lot, because I'm struggling with the same problem. One day my sugar might be high, and then, you know, I feel very bad. I don't want to see a posting of this person that's doing so great all the time. I want to see that person that has got good blood sugars also to post that it's also going bad, and when it's going bad, and what they are going through. So social media is for me also an awesome way to just connect with other people, just to see that I'm not alone, because we are not alone. We're all struggling with this. Up and down, up and down. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's blood sugar is perfect. So people should not feel bad when things are going bad. But people should know that it is okay, and you can get and will get through it, because yesterday it was bad, today you're smiling, and that can continue.
Exactly. And I think that that's really important too, because a lot of times from previous online events, Diabetes Empowerment Summit, since this is our 4th one, I get a lot of feedback, and I get a lot of people saying, I would love to start advocating for diabetes in some way, or posting or sharing more about it, but I don't know what's okay and what's not. And I always just say, what's okay is what's what's real. Back in 2015, I want to say, I did like a daily posting. I called it 30 Days of Dexcom, which is the CGM that I use. I posted my 24-hour Dexcom graph for 30 days in a row, right?
Sure.
Because I wanted to show, like, yes, you know, people see like, oh, you're an author and you're a coach and you're this, so clearly your diabetes is just pristine and all. It's like, no, I'm human just like everyone else. I just have a different mindset about the way I interact. When things go bad, I don't let that completely ruin my day. That's through lots of personal development and working on my emotions and my mindset, and the power that I have to change those when I want to, and the tools that I use to do that, music, meditation, all of those other things. But you post what's good. If that feels good to you, you post what's not good. If that's, just be yourself. But the reality of it is when I see a social media account where there's only straight lines all the time, it gives me a sense of like, this person is hiding something, and I'm not even upset. It's just that I almost like, hey, let's show all of yourself, because otherwise it's a little bit inauthentic, because we all have those zigzags. So speaking of that, I know a lot of people also ask me as far as feedback on previous interviews that I've done. I don't always ask this, but I'm going to, because I've gotten so many questions about this. They always say, well, what did this person you interviewed, what tools do they use to manage their diabetes? I see you have a pump. I saw you check your blood glucose. So do you want to talk about the tools that you use, or did you always use them? Because I know over the last 30 years, I've changed tools multiple times and things like that.
Yeah. I've got a Medtronic 640G insulin pump, and I am sponsored now. This is my sponsor for Africa, for our care. They're paying for me to go to Poland.
For karate,
for karate, I'm using their blood glucose testers, and it's one of the tools also is just a very simple thing, and that is testing your blood sugar regularly, and then having a log, and then analyzing your blood sugar results. And then it was very important for me with my training, because I needed to understand when I'm training or exercising, prior, during, and after, what is happening with my blood glucose. Because if I'm going to follow the rule book of saying I'm injecting, let's say I'm eating 15 grams, so I need 15 grams of carbs. I need 8.1 units of insulin or whatever per 15 grams, whichever it is. And I train super hard, then I've over-injected, because a couple of hours after my training, my sugar will fall then. So my blood glucose monitor is my tool, and I use that so that I can, learn from the information to avoid future hypos or hyperglycemias.
Yes.
So yeah, definitely my
blood
sugar.
And it's also really important. This is something else that I teach that has helped a lot of people, and you said it, so I want to just kind of amplify it. Insulin on board, meaning whether you've injected it through a pen or through a syringe or through a pump, exercise increases the efficacy of insulin, which means if you have, let's just say, 1 unit of insulin that's circulating throughout your body, when you start exercising, that unit is going to act like 2 or 3 units. The exercise is going to increase that insulin's ability to be used. So it's going to cause, so one of the things that I always advocate for, at least to try anything, I always tell people question everything. Any advice I give, don't take me as gospel. Try it out in your own life, see if it works, and like you said, keep a log, see what works. But this has worked for so many people, is that I do almost all of my exercise with no insulin on board. I use an Omnipod insulin pump, which I've been using for about 8 years. Before that, I was on manual injections. I'm using the Dexcom CGM. Before that, I was on just using finger pricks. Like you, I would test like 10, 15 times a day just because I wanted to know. I wanted to know what was going on. But if you're experiencing a ton of exercise-related hypos or low blood sugars, think about how much insulin you have actively circulating in your system at the time. And if you can eliminate, because the insulin's what's making your blood sugar go low. So if the insulin's not there, it has a much more difficult time making your blood sugar low because it's just not present. This is not stuff that's generally being taught by doctors' offices in the United States, and I'm assuming also in Africa.
Correct.
So
yeah.
That's a really good, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something a lot of people struggle with. They think they can't exercise and not go low, but you can if you treat it like a self-experiment, coming from a place of curiosity, compassion, not coming from a place of like, I hate myself, my body is not right, and I'm broken, and I can't. If you go into it with that mindset, it's going to influence your outcomes. But if you go into it and say, look, I'm curious to see what this is going to do, and I deserve to know because I'm worthy of experimenting on my own health, and I get to. It's a privilege. If you go into it with that mindset, you're going to tend to get better outcomes. So I'm really glad you brought that up. So do you also exercise with a minimal insulin, or do you have a different thing because you need like a ton of carbs to keep you at? How do you structure that?
So how I used to, and it was horrible. I used to eat just before training, prior to training, and that raised my blood sugar a lot. And then during training, my blood sugar is extremely high, and then afterwards, my blood sugar is dropping. So now I don't eat prior to training. In the mornings, there's a morning training, like tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, I won't eat prior to afterwards.
Yep.
Then I would consume again. But also training in the afternoons, Mondays to Thursdays, I don't eat prior to that. So I eat lunchtime and that's it, and then dinner afterwards.
Yep.
Because I still have enough, energy inside of me to push me through the training. But consuming prior to my exercise just spikes my sugar.
Too problematic.
Yes, and because it gets very technical. I need to eat and inject so many minutes or hours prior to me training to bring my blood sugar down to regular again. It just gets too complicated, so I just cut up eating, and it's working for me. It might not work for somebody else, but for me, I don't eat prior to training.
Right, and I have the same experience. Again, I have the same caveat as you. I'm not saying 100% this is going to work for everyone, but I am saying it's an experiment that is worth checking out, right? So I also usually work out in the mornings or even in the afternoons. My kind of regimen that I come to is in the morning I have coffee, and I have about a quarter cup or maybe 4 tablespoons of full fat coconut milk in it. Not like it's like just coconut milk. It's in a can, like it's very thick. So I'm definitely getting calories from that, but because it's just the coffee and stevia and the fat, that really carries me through the workout. And then after, I also eat, and I'll eat carbs and all that other stuff after. And I'm not low carb either. Like, I'm not telling people what to do. People are curious. I don't know. I eat probably like 150 to 200 grams of carbs every day, and it feels good for me. Again, not saying that that's for everyone, but people tend to be curious. Do you eat low carb in general, or are you a carb guy? What do you prefer?
I consume quite a bit of carbs. I love potatoes, I love rice, I love bread. So I try my best to inject according to my carb count, but I definitely eat a lot of carbs. I love carbs.
Okay, sweet, perfect. So, I mean, really, I think you've given so much great information and a lot of good perspectives coming from a teenage diagnosis and now being in your 30s and really using a physical modality to kind of manage your mental and emotional state, but also really leaning into acceptance and adaptability, which is a really great mindset to cultivate. Is there anything else that you want to add? Like, do you want to, I know you have Instagram, which but by the way, below this interview, the links that Graham provides will just be clickable. You can just click whatever he gave us for Instagram. Is there anything else upcoming or that you want to tell people about, or any other thing that you'd like to add before we bring this to a close?
No, I just think if I can say something, is just to say we will be okay.
Yes.
We will be okay. It's a simple thing to say. It's just, you know, there's tough times, there's difficult times, and there's going to be many of them.
Yes.
And there's good times. And just as in life, up and downs, we have up and downs, sugar just making our lives a little bit more difficult, but we are going to be okay.
I totally agree. And I think that is such a beautiful sentiment to close things out with. And if anybody's watching, just remember, everything up until now, you're still here. You did it. You've gotten through every 100% of all of the rough times so far, and you're going to keep doing that. And the more you kind of live into cultivating that mindset of empowerment each day, doing something, making a little bit of time in your day to really concentrate on bringing up your feelings of confidence and your self-reliance and self-value and things like that, it will affect your diabetes positively. So thank you so much for sharing your perspectives and for being out there advocating and fighting in karate and all that other stuff. It's amazing. I really appreciate your time. And everybody out there watching, thank you all for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this interview. Go check out Graham's Instagram, right? Is that what's going to be down there? Instagram, cool. And maybe I think there's a YouTube video as well. So again, I will check everybody out again on the next interview, and I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.
Thank you very much.